life was tragically cut short. In the footage, she is seen with two men who only minutes later would be responsible for her death. What began as a young girl's escape turned into an unexpected tragedy. Jocelyn Eliel Nungeri, affectionately called Josie by her family, was born on December 27, 2011, in Texas, USA. She was the eldest daughter of Alexis Nuh, who had her as a teenager. The identity of her father was never revealed. Despite becoming a mother at a young age, Alexis was excited about her daughter's future, describing her as extraordinarily beautiful, affectionate, and full of humor. Friends and family recall Jocelyn as a confident, energetic, and determined young girl who always had a smile on her face and loved life. Jocelyn grew up in a close-knit family with her younger siblings. She had a particularly strong bond with her sister, Gabby, whom she protected and inspired. Jocelyn taught Gabby to stand up for herself and shielded her from adversity, especially at school. Jocelyn's classmates also admired her, describing her as an unconditional friend who always saw the best in others. She excelled academically and was known for her musical talents, playing the cello in a youth orchestra. She had diverse interests, from dancing and making videos to dreaming of opening animal shelters to care for stray animals. In March 2024, the Nungeri family relocated from Conroe to North Houston, a community in Harris County, Texas. Jocelyn had to leave her school friends behind and adjust to a new environment. However, the family's hope for a fresh start soon turned into a nightmare. On the night of Sunday, June 16, 2024, around 10 p.m., Alexis said goodnight to Jocelyn, reminding her not to stay up too late as they had to get up early the next day. Around 3 a.m., Alexis noticed that Jocelyn's cat was acting restless, but assuming her daughter was comforting the cat, she went back to sleep. The next morning, Alexis began her routine but was alarmed when she found that Jocelyn was not in her room. Panicked, Alexis searched the house and the apartment complex, but there was no trace of her daughter. In her desperation, she remembered that she could track Jocelyn's location using her phone's GPS. The system led her to a nearby stream, where she saw police officers already investigating the area. Earlier that morning, around 6 a.m., a woman named Billie Jean Jackson, on her way home after dropping her husband off at work, had noticed something unusual floating in the water. At first, she thought it was a mannequin, but as she got closer, she realized the horrifying truth: it was a human body. Jackson immediately called 911, and within 15 minutes, the Houston Police Department's dive team arrived to recover the body. Shortly after, Alexis arrived at the scene. It was confirmed that the body was Jocelyn's. That afternoon, a press conference was held to inform the community about the discovery and announce the start of an investigation into the tragic death of Jocelyn Nuh. The investigation into the tragic death of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nuh unfolded quickly after her body was found on June 17, 2024. Authorities immediately launched an intense inquiry, determined to bring justice to the young victim and her devastated family. In their initial statements, they assured the public that they would not rest until those responsible for the horrific crime were caught and held accountable. The forensic examination was completed soon after, and the results provided crucial insight into Jocelyn's final moments. The forensic report revealed that Jocelyn's cause of death was asphyxiation due to compression of the neck, leading investigators to reclassify the case as a homicide. This chilling discovery marked the beginning of a comprehensive search for her killers. Additionally, the forensic team reported that Jocelyn had been sexually assaulted before she died, which compounded the horror of the crime. Further examination of her body also revealed clear signs that she had fought back against her attackers, showing her resilience in the face of overwhelming violence. These findings fueled the investigators' urgency to solve the case swiftly. 2 days later, on June 18, 2024, the authorities released the first major breakthrough in their investigation. They shared images retrieved from various security cameras in the area that captured Jocelyn in the hours leading up to her death. The footage showed that Jocelyn had entered a convenience store, part of a popular chain, sometime around midnight. She was a regular customer there, and it was a place she felt comfortable. However, what shocked investigators and the public alike was the presence of two unknown men in the same store at the same time. Both men were wearing baseball caps, concealing part of their faces, but their movements were clear enough for the police to identify them as persons of interest. According to investigators, these men were likely the last individuals to see Jocelyn alive. They did not appear to have accompanied her to the store, nor did they seem to know her prior to that fateful night. It was a tragic case of their paths crossing by chance. In a statement, the The police urged anyone with information about the identity or whereabouts of these two individuals to come forward. The images were broadcast across the media, hoping that someone would recognize the men and help bring them to justice. During the investigation, it was also revealed that Jocelyn had been on the phone with her 13-year-old boyfriend at the time. His identity has been kept private due to his age, but he provided vital information to the police. The boy testified that during their phone call, he overheard Jocelyn talking to two adult men just before their conversation was abruptly cut off. This was the last known communication Jocelyn had before she was attacked. One of the key witnesses in the case was Christian Goff, an employee of the convenience store. Goff often saw Jocelyn during his shifts and remembered her as a regular customer. On the night of the murder, he had already finished work when he saw her near the store's storage room. Goff told police that Jocelyn seemed like she was hiding from something, but at the time, he couldn't tell from what or whom. He later expressed deep regret for not intervening, feeling that perhaps he could have done something to prevent the tragedy. However, he acknowledged that at the time, there was no way for him to know what would happen next. As the investigation continued, Jocelyn's family made a heartfelt plea to the community. They asked for help in identifying and apprehending the men responsible for their daughter's death. In addition, the family set up an online fundraising campaign to help cover the costs of Jocelyn's funeral. The Nungari family, devastated by their loss, also announced their plans to hold a series of tributes to honor Jocelyn's life, hoping to keep her memory alive while also seeking justice. Jocelyn's mother, Alexis, was left shattered by the loss of her daughter. She remained hopeful for news, though each passing hour without answers was agony. It wasn't until June 19, 2 days after having to identify her daughter's body, that Alexis spoke publicly for the first time. Her voice, heavy with grief, Alexis described her life as a waking nightmare, something no mother should ever have to endure, through tears. She expressed her deep anger and sadness at the brutal and senseless crime that had taken Jocelyn from her. Alexis also opened up about the struggles Jocelyn had faced in the months leading up to her death. She revealed that her daughter had been experiencing mental health challenges, though she chose not to go into further detail to avoid any additional pain. Despite these difficulties, Alexis emphasized that Jocelyn had been a brave girl who had faced these personal struggles head-on. She also expressed confusion and sorrow over why her daughter had left the house that night, as Jocelyn had always been warned not to go out without supervision and to be cautious around strangers. Alexis's heart-wrenching plea to the police was simple: find the culprits and bring them to justice. Her plea did not go unanswered. Just 1 day after her emotional statement, on June 20th, the police identified the suspects in Jocelyn's murder. Franklin Jose Pena Ramos, 26, and Johan, 22, were arrested in an apartment complex not far from where Jocelyn's body was found. Both men were immigrants, Franklin from Mexico and Johan from Venezuela. They were taken into custody and charged with capital murder, marking a significant breakthrough in the case. Little was known about the suspects at the time of their arrest, but authorities quickly revealed that both men had prior run-ins with law enforcement. Franklin and Johan had both been apprehended by Border Patrol agents earlier that year, though the exact dates of their illegal entry into the United States were unclear. Johan was captured by Border Patrol agents in El Paso, Texas, on March 14, while Franklin was detained just 2 weeks later, on March 28. Despite their arrests, both men were released on bail under the condition that they wear electronic monitoring devices and appear before the court regularly. However, they failed to comply with these conditions, and by the time Jocelyn was murdered, both men had absconded. The arrest of Franklin and Johan was the result of a phone call made to the police on the night of June 19. The caller, whose identity has not been disclosed, informed authorities that a cousin of theirs named Joe had been living with the two suspects. After seeing the images of the men on television, the informant recognized them immediately and provided crucial details about their location, allowing police to make the arrest. At the same press conference, ICE confirmed that both suspects had entered the United States illegally and had evaded capture until now. With the suspects in custody, police began to piece together the events leading up to Jocelyn's death. According to their reconstruction of the crime, Franklin and Johan had started their night at a Northborough restaurant, where they spent several hours. From there, they walked south and eventually encountered Jocelyn on the street. The men allegedly approached her under the pretense of asking for directions. The three were then seen together on security footage at a convenience store before leaving and heading to a nearby bridge. It was at this bridge where police believe the men sexually assaulted and later killed Jocelyn. After the assault, They strangled her and left her body in the shallow waters under the bridge. They then calmly walked back to their apartment as though nothing had happened. Investigators later revealed that the men had even discussed plans to flee the country after the murder. Johann shaved his head in an attempt to alter his appearance and avoid recognition after their images were circulated by the media. Despite their efforts, both men were caught before they could escape. On June 21st, the prosecution formally charged both men with capital murder. The court hearing was held on June 23rd, where bail was set at $10 million. During the hearing, Franklin admitted to having mistreated Jocelyn but claimed that it was Johann who had inflicted the fatal injuries. Franklin also confessed that he had followed Johann's instructions when he dumped Jocelyn's body into the water. Johann initially denied any involvement in the crime but later confessed to his role. The two suspects are expected to appear in court again in September 2024. As of now, no further details have been released regarding the legal proceedings. Jocelyn's funeral was held on June 27, 2024, at Earthman Rest Haven Cemetery. The service was followed by a celebration of her life at Gallery Furniture, a Houston business whose owner, Jim Mackingvale, generously covered all funeral expenses. Both events were open to the public, and hundreds of people gathered to pay their respects and support the grieving Nung Eri family. The community, still reeling from the tragedy, came together to honor Jocelyn and mourn her loss. In the wake of Jocelyn's death, political figures quickly weighed in. Texas Governor Greg Abbott called for capital punishment for Franklin and Johann, while former President Donald Trump blamed the current administration's immigration policies for the tragedy. Trump specifically pointed to President Joe Biden's border policies, accusing him of allowing dangerous criminals into the country. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas responded to the controversy, assuring the public that those responsible for Jocelyn's death would face justice. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick announced plans to introduce Jocelyn's Law, a new bill aimed at preventing capital murder suspects from being granted bail. Meanwhile, Senator Ted Cruz proposed Justice for Jocelyn, a law intended to strengthen immigration policies and prevent illegal immigrants with criminal backgrounds from re-entering the United States. Cruz mentioned Jocelyn during his speech at the Republican National Convention in July 2024, further politicizing the tragedy. Amidst the political storm, Jocelyn's mother, Alexis, remained focused on pushing for legislative change. In an emotional public statement, she called for reforms that would keep illegal immigrants in custody while their cases are processed, rather than releasing them on bail. She argued that her daughter's death could have been prevented if stricter immigration controls had been in place. Alexis also proposed the implementation of a curfew for individuals wearing electronic monitoring devices or ankle shackles. She believed that these measures would protect other families from experiencing the same devastating loss. In her speech, Alexis emphasized that her push for reform was not only about seeking justice for Jocelyn, but also about preventing similar tragedies in the future. She explained that while her daughter was gone, she hoped that Jocelyn's legacy would live on through legislative changes that would ensure greater safety for children and families. The heartbreak of losing her child, she said, should serve as a call to action for lawmakers and the public alike. Beyond the political debates and legislative proposals that emerged in the wake of Jocelyn's murder, the tragedy sparked a broader reflection on the safety of young people and the importance of strengthening justice systems. Jocelyn's death was a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by children and the urgent need for communities, authorities, and policymakers to work together to create a safer world. The swift response of law enforcement, along with the outpouring of support from the community, demonstrated the power of collective action in times of crisis. From the initial investigation to the eventual arrests, authorities worked tirelessly to ensure that justice would be served. Meanwhile, the community's support for the Nung Eri family provided a source of comfort during their darkest days. However, the pain of losing Jocelyn is a burden that her family will carry forever. The Nung Eri family, like so many other families who have experienced similar tragedies, must now navigate a future without their beloved daughter. For them, the search for justice is not just about holding the perpetrators accountable. It is about healing the deep wounds left by violence and honoring Jocelyn's memory. As the legal proceedings against Franklin and Johann continue, the community remains hopeful that justice will prevail. The case has drawn national attention and ignited important conversations about the intersection of immigration policy, public safety, and the rights of crime victims. While the road ahead may be long, Jocelyn's family is determined to see the process through and to ensure that her death was not in vain. In the end, Jocelyn's story is a tragic reminder of the fragility of life and the senselessness of violence. Her loss has left an indelible mark on her community, and her memory will continue to inspire efforts to protect vulnerable children from harm. As the Nungeri family grieves, they also take solace in the knowledge that Jocelyn's legacy will endure through the changes they are working to bring about, changes that they hope will prevent other families from experiencing the same heartache. Ultimately, the search for justice in Jocelyn's case is part of a broader fight against the systemic issues that allow crimes like this to occur. It calls for a renewed commitment to ensuring the safety of young people, holding perpetrators accountable, and creating a society where such tragedies are not only rare but preventable. While the pain of Jocelyn's loss will never fully fade, her memory serves as a powerful motivator for positive change. As of now, the trial of Franklin and Johan is set for September 2024, and the Nungeri family continues to advocate for justice on behalf of their daughter. They remain committed to their cause, working alongside community leaders, politicians, and advocates to push for the reforms that will honor Jocelyn's life and protect future generations. The tragedy of her death may never be fully understood, but the fight for justice in her name continues, and with it, the hope that such a senseless loss will not be repeated. Jocelyn Nungeri will forever be remembered as a brave young girl whose life was taken too soon. In the months and years to come, her story will remain a poignant reminder of the need for vigilance, compassion, and action in the face of injustice. While her family mourns her loss, they also carry forward her memory, using it as a beacon for change and a testament to the enduring power of love and community.